The House will come to order. Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 3638. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 3638, number 10 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety, the first engrossment.
Call upon the author of the bill from Chisago, Representative New, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You may be aware that in January of this year, a little boy, Alan Geisenketter, was hit and killed by a snowmobiler who was driving drunk on Chisago Lake as this little boy was out ice fishing with his parents. That was the impetus for me looking into these drunk driving laws. And actually, at this point, Mr. Speaker, if we can, I do have an amendment to the bill.
Representative New offers the following amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
New moves to amend Senate File number 3638, the first engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A18-0909.
Representative New.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment would simply, at the request of the family, name this law in honor of this little boy who was killed, little Alan's Law. And I would request a yes vote.
Discussion. Seeing no discussion on the amendment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. Representative Nash offers the following amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Nash moves to amend Senate File number 3638, the first engrossment as amended as follows, and the amendment is coded A2.
Call upon the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is to address the issue of the family that lost their son in a carbon monoxide fish house death. We had forgotten to draft the piece in Chair Fabian's bill to be the Sam Schooley Act. That's the only change. Representative New has agreed to take this amendment, and thank you for your support.
Discussion to the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File number 3638 as amended.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill as amended. Member from Morrison, Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. I rise in support of this bill, and it's a good bill. I just want to, as we come into the boating season, and my family and my kids certainly love to do that, and we have a lot of fun, and I think we need to be cognizant of this. And one of the things people have mentioned is the intoxication in a boat. But remember, if you're out and you are operating a boat and you've had a couple drinks, you still get out of that boat and trailer your boat and drive again. So we really should be cognizant. It's the right thing to do, and I support the bill.
Member for Isanti, Representative Johnson B.
Mr. Speaker, members, I want to thank Representative New for bringing this forward. It was a terrible incident that happened in her district. I want to add a little bit more information on why we need to do this. Years ago, they were linked together. This is just relinking them that inadvertently missed. Just a reminder that the driver of that snowmobile, he was supposed to be on interlock and not driving any motor vehicle without an interlock system. Unfortunately, because the ATVs and the motor vehicles were delinked, he was allowed to drive an ATV, even though he's not supposed to drive a motor vehicle without the alcohol interlock system. So Representative Van New, thank you for bringing this forward.
The author of the bill from Chisago, Representative New.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really do believe that this is important provision that relinks DWI's penalties, whether they are incurred in a vehicle on the road or using off-road vehicles, ATVs, snowmobiles, etc. It is supported by the MinUSA, the Snowmobile Association. It's also supported by the Minnesota ATV clubs, and I would respectfully ask for your support.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. Frankie votes aye. There being 126 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. Member from Chisago, Representative New. For what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to recognize and acknowledge 2 members of the family of this little boy, Alan Geisenketter, who are here today. His aunt, Gwen Coker, and his cousin, Logan Coker, who at 13 years old testified in the Environment Committee on behalf of this bill and did a phenomenal job. And I want to just acknowledge them and appreciate that they are here.
"13 years old and testifying before a committee. Perhaps we want to recruit you for a future legislative run, young man."
The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3202. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3202, number 9 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to health, the first engrossment.
Call upon the author of the bill from Rock, Representative Schomacker, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Member, the need for additional beds at Regions Hospital, both for mental and medical care, is critical this year. Regions is currently operating without any additional licensed capacity at unsafe occupancy levels. What that means is they practice only level 1 adult and pediatric trauma and burn center, and having that in the area, while trauma and burn patients are never diverted, other patients may be boarded in the emergency department until a bed is freed up. This is not the case for those of us who may see a friend or a family member ourselves in there. We would not want to see that. Today we have House File 3202, and as this legislation will help us address one of the most challenging issues we hear about in the Health and Human Service Committee, the mental health care. This bill guarantees an additional 20 inpatient mental health beds, something that no other HHS proposal had done this year, and does so without any additional state funds. The other important role that Regions fills in the community is the statutorily designated East Metro Safety Net Hospital. What this means is, in practice, is that Regions provides more uncompensated care for the most vulnerable citizens than any other St. Paul hospital combined. In fact, when you look at the report that the Department of Health came out on this issue, the amount of uncompensated care is 2.4% versus 1.2% of the charity care that is done from other hospitals in the area and the average for those hospitals. We do have an amendment today that we'll get to in a moment that represents what we're trying to work closer towards, and that is a compromise. Originally, Region's proposal asked for over 100 beds over 22 years, and the amendment today is crafted to be responsive to the feedback both from lawmakers and from the Department of Health in what they have. It's also structured a little bit differently in the 2-tier process that they present. Now, I know members have had the opportunity to review the public interest report from the Minnesota Department of Health. Governor Dayton had weighed in on that report yesterday, stating in his letter to the Health and Human Service chairs and leads yesterday that considering only the results of the public interest review, in this case, could be used to disadvantage one health system that happens to not have excess capacity due to how the capacity was arbitrarily frozen in place in 1984. The governor goes on to say that the legislature should consider other factors in addition to public interest review, such as critical safety net roles that Regions plays in the East Metro, while not ignoring the important roles of other St. Paul hospitals. This proposal does that. The first phase that will be in the amendment that we will adopt in a moment is for medical patients that requires in statute that 20 of the 52 beds there be used for mental health. Only when mental health beds have been brought through and brought online will Regions be granted the final 24 beds to sustain their role as safety net as a full-service community hospital. You may have heard that this proposal could have an impact on other health systems, and I have not yet been able to find data that supports that there isn't need for additional capacity at Regions. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I would ask for your support and move to amendments.
Representative Schomacker offers the following amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Schomacker moves to amend House Bill number 3202, the first engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A3.
Member from Rock, Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the amendment I was talking about. This is the compromise piece. So the original plan was 100 beds, 32 years. This brings it back to 52 beds at first and then 24 beds. And the 52 beds, the first 20 are for OBs, the second 20 for mental health, and then 12 to help compensate the fact that we have mental health, the beds there. After those beds are put in place, then we have the opportunity, Regions has the opportunity to expand to 24 more beds. A little bit about why we have this makeup and why this was the number that we came up with. First, there has been bed closures in the OB area over the last year in the East Metro. And so adding 20 OB beds was part of their proposal to have that come forward so that there was more access to the OB beds that we can have in the East Metro area. The second piece is that there is demand in the public interest review, and all interested parties have said that 20 mental health beds is not out of the question for anyone, and so we put in the 20 mental health beds there. Now, mental health, as we know in this state, is expensive, and it doesn't reimburse very well. In fact, hospitals lose money on mental health beds, and so the plan also includes 12 medical surgical beds that do act as more profit-driven are able to cash flow much more easily. Those beds are used to compensate so that those first 52 beds really just break even in the process for what they're trying to do. Once that's in place, then they have the option of doing 24 more beds. And the number 24 was arrived at because as hospitals are built and as wings are added, there are 12 beds that go to each nurse's station. So this would allow for 2 nurses' stations. And this also is the number that is needed so that Regions is able to finance the first part of the build and be able to back that up for their financiers. And so I would ask for your support.
There is an amendment to the amendment. The clerk will report the amendment to the amendment.
Peterson moves to amend the Schomacker amendment to House Bill number 3202, the first engrossment as follows. The amendment to the amendment is coded A5.
Call upon the author of the amendment to the amendment from Dakota, Representative Peterson, to explain her amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment was brought to me by the Fairview system because St. Joseph is a hospital that is located right next to Regions Hospital.
Members, the noise in the chamber has become quite loud. Please take your conversations to the alcoves, to the retiring room, or if necessary, the caucus rooms below the House floor. Representative Peterson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment allows for 30 additional beds, with 18 of them going towards mental health. We know that we need more mental health beds, and there is a crisis that we are dealing with across our state. Currently, St. Joseph has 105 mental health beds out of their roughly 200 beds that they have in their hospitals now. And there is concern that we won't be able to have a viable hospital at St. Joe's if this legislation moves forward. And we believe that this more aligns with the findings that were found from the Department of Health. And for that, I'm happy to offer my support for this amendment. Thank you.
Discussion. Member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and thank you, Representative Peterson. We have not talked about this. I know this whole issue is extraordinarily difficult for all of us as legislators. And I know that everybody on this floor wants to do the right thing. And the problem that we're all struggling with is that none of us really knows what the right thing is here. And I do appreciate this amendment because well, let me just back up and say that I don't think there's anyone among us who doesn't understand that Regions is a very important hospital and provides unique services here in the metro area, and that we absolutely do not want to see Regions lose its ability to provide the important services that it does. And the problem, of course, is the way this process plays out and the sort of odd system we find ourselves in with regard to the moratorium on hospital beds. The Department of Health was asked to do the review that they do under law, and they got the information a little bit on the late side. So they rushed through and did an expedited analysis and came out with their response that the proposal that was put before them, which is not the current one, granted, was not in the public interest. But we also understand there are a lot of factors that they were not able to take into account. They did an expedited process, and I think the governor's right to point out that that's not the be-all and end-all, especially now that they've cut back their ask a little bit. And the problem that I find myself in, and I know a lot of other members are in this situation too, is that we don't have a lot of good information with which to evaluate that new proposal, or for that matter, the one that you're putting forward. What I would really like to see as a result of all of this, understanding that there are very important interests on both sides here, or on all sides. As legislators, our interest is not to help one system versus another system. It's to make sure that patients in Minnesota have access to services wherever they live, that they can get appropriate services, and that the prices are kept down to the degree that that's possible. And we're in this situation where we don't have all the facts. There are a lot of moving parts to this. With the changing proposal, with the changing responses, I feel like we're kind of not ready to just vote up or down, yes or no. And so I'm going to support your amendment, Representative Peterson, not because I think that that's necessarily the right answer, because frankly, I think it's a little too slim. But I also feel like the one that Regions is now putting forward, the underlying amendment, is a little too rich. I'd like to see something in between there. And I think that we're just not really ready. I think we can get to a better place for Regions and for the other systems if we spend a little bit more time on it. And so, I guess I'm wanting to hear directly from Representative Schomacker kind of his response to your amendment. But my feeling is that let me just ask if she would yield to a question, Mr. Speaker.
She will yield. Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Peterson, do you know where we are in the other body and what would be the effect if your amendment goes on and the bill passes with your amendment on? Are we going to conference committee, and will there be another opportunity to do some more work on this?
Member from Dakota, Representative Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative. It's not my bill, so no, I'm not sure.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Schomacker yield to a question?
He will yield. Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Schomacker, same question to you. I have no idea if this amendment to the amendment is going to go on. I don't know where the members are on this. But if this should go on, is that going to be the end of this? Is it just yes or no? Or are we going to be able to go forward and do some more work on this and try to reach a better solution with the other body?
Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Liebling. Given the time that we are in session, this bill was introduced in the first couple weeks of session. We had a hearing on it in the Health and Human Service area. We held off on any floor votes until the public interest report came out. We had a hearing on that. Given the time frame that we have, I don't think that we would have time to bring it to conference committee and send something back as it is, and so that's where we're at.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If he would continue to yield.
He will. Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Schomacker, can you tell us what the status is in the other body?
Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Liebling, I apologize. I know that was the first part of your question there. It is sitting on the floor, just waiting to be taken up.
Representative Liebling.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm assuming then that there will be the same amendment will be offered by regions over there. And so it sounds to me like if just the regions amendment goes on, that we have a bill and that's the bill. And so I'm going to support your amendment, Representative Peterson, not because I think it's necessarily the best solution, because it does seem to me like it's a little bit stingy. But I think the other one I'm not comfortable with either, because I feel like it's maybe a little too broad. And let me just say, members, I think the problem that we have here is that once we open the door, once you say, yes, go ahead, you've got so many beds, we really need to examine the whole system. And once we've given that authority, I'm not sure we can pull it back. Whereas we can always give some and then come back and do more. Is kind of the way I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure that's the best way, but I'm going to support the amendment kind of as my way of saying let's keep the conversation going. I think we still have time for a few people to get together and try to reach something that's a little bit more of a negotiated solution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Ramsey, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise with some similar points of view that Representative Liebling just mentioned. I will be voting for the amendment, but with some reservations. First of all, I want to mention is that St. John's is a local hospital in my district, a mile from my house. It's where one of my kids was born. It's the emergency room that we occasionally have used. I want to make sure that as we're going forward that their hospital is being protected in the process. And as I've talked to our local hospital, they were feeling that they'd like the amendment for what is being proposed right here for the 30. But I do have reservations because there are some other things that I've heard in terms of what Regions does. As I do know that Regions right now is our only Trauma 1 hospital in the area. I do know that there are instances where my local hospital, St. John's, cannot provide some of the emergency services that are needed. When my father had his heart problems, he was taken to Regions because that was the best hospital suited for him. The complication that has come from there is we have an issue at Regions right now where there is not enough access. I have talked to our local paramedics in our local region, our firefighter paramedics. My son's one of those. We have spent a long time last night talking about this very issue. And what I've heard from them is that it is not unusual that when they have a run, going on emergency run to Regions, that Regions is closed. When I talked to him for further details, he was mentioning that if it's after 11 o'clock at night, it is common that if they've got an emergency run and the patient is asking to go to Regions, they have to tell that patient, I'm sorry, we cannot go to Regions. What is another hospital that we can take you to? That is a concern because we are taking a look, and I think this is one of the things that's been missed in the conversation, is that we've got local citizens saying, this is where we want to go for our services. We feel that Regions does the best job for the emergency situation that I have. And right now, our local caretakers, our local paramedics are not able to deliver that. And as I've talked to my son on, he says it's really tough to deliver that to these people. When you've got somebody who's critically injured and to be able to say they can't go to the hospital that they feel most comfortable with, that's a little bit of a dig and makes them feel uncomfortable. And we know that these are the type of things that your frame of mind can make a difference. And if you don't feel comfortable going to your primary care hospital or the hospital that you want to go to for emergency services, that can have a negative impact. And so that's why I'm feeling very uncomfortable with it just being 30, because I don't know if that's going to be high enough. When I hear that too often during the week, multiple times during the week right now, after 11 o'clock at night, they're having to divert to another hospital, that raises concerns for me. And while I don't feel comfortable where the 76 is, I feel that might be too high and might endanger my local hospital. I feel that the 30 might be too low, and I would prefer to see something else somewhere in between. But we definitely need to move something forward. We're already waiting too long on this. Regions needs to get underway with these extra beds, because even once we approve it, there's going to be a delay of a couple of years as they build out the facilities for it. And that just means several more years of delay for people being diverted too often. Thank you.
Member from Dakota, Representative Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the conversation that we're having on the floor. And I do think it's something that we have to talk about in the future is the moratorium on beds. It's a difficult conversation, but one I think we should have. And in lieu of that, I withdraw my amendment.
Representative Peterson withdraws her amendment to the amendment. We are on the underlying Schomacker amendment. Discussion to that amendment. Seeing member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I am the lead, I'm the second author on the bill. In addition, the Sisters of St. Joseph Carondelet, who are an organization that's been particularly opposed to the expansion or proposed to this proposal, are in my district, and I have to say I feel very close to the sisters, and so I feel a particular obligation to describe my feelings on this bill in recognition of strong feelings of my constituents. It's clear, members, that Regions does need to expand. That there's a huge need. You've heard the description from Representative Schomacker and from Representative Fisher, among others. And I think that's recognized in the report from the Department of Health that said that the 100-bed request that was originally proposed was not in the public interest. But there was recognition, as I read that report, that there is a need for an expansion. And the question is, what size expansion and what makes the most sense? I'll notice that the governor's letter, also referred to by Representative Schomacker, acknowledges that we have to be stepping back more broadly and taking a look at this issue and recognizing that there is a need. And the question is, where do we put that? The smaller request that was proposed has now been withdrawn. That's not before us currently, and of course we're in the final couple days of session. What is before us is a request that has been adjusted down by 25% from the original request reviewed by Department of Health. It's a request, members, and again, constituents, that it's particularly important to me, the breadth of support in St. Paul and the East Metro. The City of St. Paul, Ramsey County, the Chamber of Commerce, every union that represents workers at this hospital, as well as the other hospitals, are in support, with the exception of one, and that one union is neutral at least, not opposed, and many other groups as well, as listed in the handout. I certainly have concerns about the potential ripple effects of this decision. I certainly agree with Representative Peterson that the moratorium, and I would suggest more broadly, there's some broader issues that need to be looked at. But in the meantime, we have patients that are being brought to this hospital that they're not able to serve. And members, when I look at the breadth of support for this in St. Paul and the fact that the opposition comes from these two other systems that are in competition, as well as the sisters, who I should note founded St. Joseph's and have been dedicated to social justice for so long. But when I balance these out, that lands me to still be in support of the proposal. And I thank Representative Schomacker for bringing it forward. And I hope that we can continue to make sure that we have a healthy health ecosystem in the East Metro for many years to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion to the A3 amendment. The member from Hennepin, Representative Carlson L.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, Representative Schomacker yield to a question.
He will yield. Representative Carlson.
Representative Schomacker, I'm reading the language here in your amendment, and it looks pretty tight. My interest in raising a question is the mental health beds, the 20 beds. And it looks like you've got a process in place that assures that there will in fact be 20 mental health beds. The reason I raised this question, I was down this road a few years ago when we were dealing with the hospital in Maple Grove, and mental health beds were a big part of the equation, and we had a commitment that mental health beds would be completed. And to the best of my knowledge, unless I've gotten misinformation, that never happened, even though we had a commitment that it was going to happen. So just so that in addition to the language, the record would show from your standpoint, and is there a commitment in addition to the language from the hospital that those beds will be made available?
Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Carlson, yes. As you can see in the language, there are two phases, and the first phase includes 20 licensed beds, and then within 6 months after those 20 licensed beds are on line 1.7 for those inpatient mental health services, are authorized, the commissioner shall authorize an additional of the remaining 24 beds. And so in order to get those 24 beds, those beds that are going to finance the build on those first 52 beds, they have to have the mental health beds in and operational in order to get those extra beds.
And Mr. Speaker, as I indicated with my comments, my view was that the language was tight, but I was soliciting, in addition to that, a commitment by the hospital that in fact would be something they wanted to see happen, because I don't remember exactly what our language was for the Maple Grove Hospital. It may have been just a verbal commitment, but the unfortunate thing is that it didn't happen, and I just want to make sure that it does in fact happen. And not only is there a commitment to the language, but that there's a philosophical commitment on the part of the hospital to make sure those mental health facilities are provided, because there's a huge need there. And that's the only reason I raised the question and asked for the record, in addition to the language, show that there's a commitment to those 20 mental health beds. And I full well, members recognize, and having been down this road, unfortunately there is a reimbursement issue when we're dealing with the mental health beds. Sometimes families have to meet a high copay. It can be very expensive for a single weekend or a few days of holding if somebody has an issue. And sometimes when you're dealing with individuals that are having some mental health issues, financing, insurance, sometimes those are issues. So I recognize that the hospitals have probably an economic situation here, but in the overall funding of a hospital, I would hope that they would be willing to make sure that those beds are provided. And it's probably a burden on us as a legislative body in the future to look at how we handle some of the reimbursement in the area of mental health. Thank you.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Schomacker yield to a question?
He will yield. Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Schomacker, one of the things that gave a little bit of heartburn to the Department of Health was the long period of time that the original request was for. I think it was 22 years. And I understand that the current proposal that's in your amendment is to shorten that up to the information that the hospital had put out was to less than 10 years. But there's nothing in the amendment that refers to that shorter time. So is it your understanding, I mean, I understand that these licenses could essentially, or the authorization for a bed license could expire. And there's nothing in the amendment that I see that talks about how long these licenses would be good for, notwithstanding that they said they were shortening the timeline. Could you please explain where you're showing a shortening of the timeline?
The member from Rock, Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Liebling. I would direct you to the letter that came out from Regions this morning that talked about some of their things, the commitment on there, but there is no language in the amendment that does go with that. They had also, in addition to their original plan, or from their original plan, had changed I believe it was the 2025 date for the mental health beds to be installed to be brought back to 2021. Excuse me, 2023 to have the mental health beds be brought back to 2021. So they are shortening it, but I do not see that in the language as it is.
Member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, thank you, Representative Schomacker. You're right. In the original proposal, they had proposed to add 20 mental health beds in 2025. So from the point of view of all of us who think mental health beds are really, really important, that's a great thing. But it also projected some of the additions out to 2040. And that was one of the big problems that the Department of Health had when they analyzed the request, was that the prediction about what's going to happen gets really fuzzy the further out you look, because of just changes in how hospital beds are used and so on and so on. So since the shortening of the timeline was one of the pitches for the new and improved proposal, now I'm understanding that, in fact, there's going to be nothing in law that shortens up that timeline. I think that is kind of a problem. I don't know that that would be a reason that members would vote against it now that we have this or nothing, but I think that's a problem. And as Representative Carlson noted, in the past, promises have been made and not kept. And I think that if we're going to, I'm glad that the mental health beds, or at least the promise is somewhat more written in stone here, but the timeline, I think, if there's an opportunity going forward, that I think has to go into the bill. Thank you.
Member from Hennepin, Representative Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will Representative Schomacker yield for another question?
He will. Representative Pryor.
Thank you. And I am seeking information here just to understand this proposal. Thank you. What would be the consequences if it's not passed in the session? And I frame that as being important because there was a report from the Department of Health, but it was just in regards to the 100 beds. Not that Regions does not need more beds. And so I think that's what we're struggling with right now is how many beds would be the right number. And we are now trying to do this as a legislative body, and that seems to be a difficult position to be in right now. So if it's, and I know, but we only have a few days left in the session. So what would happen if it were not passed in this session and another year went by?
Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative. Well, just looking at what the hospital is facing today, we got a report this morning that the occupancy at Regions today is 95%. They are 95% full. For a hospital to operate at its optimum level, they should be at about 80%. And so they are at 95% today. If we wait until next year, they would be sitting at those same numbers. If we pass today the amendment and we pass the bill and they actually had the beds in by tonight, they would still be at 85.2%, even with the 76 beds that are there. So the sooner we can get this going, the sooner we can get that number down to that 80% level so that the level 1 trauma and safety net hospital of the East Metro can be operating at its most optimal level. Thank you for the question.
Discussion. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the A3 amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments to the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 3202, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion. Discussion to the bill. The author of the bill from Rock, Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, and thank you for the opportunity to present this bill today. As I stated before and as the discussion went, this is a level 1 trauma hospital. And Mr. Speaker, if I could, I would like to yield to Representative Lilly. Right.
The member from Regions, Representative Lilly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Schomacker. I wasn't actually rushing in here. I guess I can't use any bad jokes this time, she said. She does listen. Well, Mr. Speaker and members, this is really a tough one for me, of course. I didn't know much about Regions Hospital, to be quite honest, and got to spend some days there, and quite honestly, I feel like they saved my life, so it makes it, not to sway your votes at all, but they really did some amazing work, but we do need strong hospitals in the East Metro, you know, all over, so it's a tough vote, but I really do want to thank Regions for the work they did in putting a lot of stitches and Band-Aids and super glue or whatever the heck they did. But thank you, Chair Schomacker. I wasn't planning on speaking, but yeah, thank you.
Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Lilly. You concluded things well for me there. I just want a few thank yous, Representative Pinto. I know that he and I had worked a little bit on this, and he's kind of in the center of it all, and there's no way for him to really please everyone on this issue. And just overall on this hospital moratorium bed issue, it is a faulty issue. This was created in 1984, and things were different in 1984. Healthcare was far different in 1984. We didn't really have computers. You didn't have Joe Schomacker in 1984. And so we're dealing with policies that were put in place at that time, and things change. And now we have competing organizations that have financial interest are the ones who are trying to arbitrate what is in the best public interest for the state. And so we are getting a lot of problems with that, and I think we saw some of that this year in just how this process goes. I want to thank the members who were called off the floor several times over the last couple of days to talk about this issue and then talk to me about this issue. I greatly appreciate your willingness to listen to this. Regions is an exceptional hospital, and they do work that no one else really does. They are unique in the work they do. Their burn unit alone is just tremendous, and the Trauma One Center that they do and that they keep up, and to compete with that and to just keep them operating so that they can continue to do the good work that they do is tremendous. And I just thank everyone who's voting green today, and I'll keep working on the ones who aren't. Thank you.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill as amended. The clerk will close the roll. There being 112 ayes and 15 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 327. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 327, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to consumer protection, the third engrossment.
Call upon the author of the bill from Beltrami, Representative Bliss, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate File 327 prohibits a person from entering or attempting to enter into an agreement with a military beneficiary that assigns that beneficiary's military payer benefits to another party, which is in violation of federal law. Since federal law in this area is not widely enforced, Senate File 327 gives veterans and military service personnel in Minnesota the ability to recover damage, including reasonable attorney's fees and the costs if they become a victim of this practice. The Attorney General's office brought this forward to me. They cited examples of companies nationwide who duped veterans and military service personnel into tapping into their pensions for what a loan rate of 28 and sometimes higher percentage rates. In Minnesota, the Attorney General has brought action against a bad actor who has victimized at least 100 people in our state. Defense has argued that this law the existing law does not apply to them. Passage of this law would better enable the Attorney General to go after these bad actors, as well as give victims a method to recoup money that these companies have taken from them. The Senate version differs from the House language in that it adds spouse of the member to the beneficiary language. It adds life insurance beneficiaries, such as children and parents of the member, and it specifies that the Attorney General may enforce this law as well. I'm happy to accept their language, and it did pass the Senate by 64 to nothing. and I ask for your support.
There are no amendments to the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File number 327.
Third reading. Discussion. The member from Hennepin, Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a good bill for veterans. It's really important that we protect them, and thank you for bringing this forward, and I urge a green vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Members, please vote. Drazkowski. West, Drazkowski, Lomer, the clerk will close the roll. There being 128 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3610. Member from Washington, Representative Detmer, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise a point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
And members, and Mr. Speaker, this summer we're going to have a large group of veterans coming to Minnesota Minnesota is going to be hosting the 100th National Convention for the American Legion. I have a House resolution I'd like to read, and also encourage you to get out and visit your local American Legion post. And congratulations, the House resolution reads, congratulations to the American Legion Department of Minnesota on hosting the American Legion 100th National Convention. And Mr. Speaker, I yield to Representative Howe.
Member from Stearns, Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And whereas the American Legion was chartered by the United States Congress in 1919 as a patriotic veterans organization, and Mr. Speaker, I'll yield to Representative Bliss.
Member from Beltrami, Representative Bliss.
Whereas the American Legion's formal founding convention was held in Minneapolis from November 10th through 12th, 1919, and I will yield to Representative Eklund.
Member from Kuchiching, Representative Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whereas the American Legion's efforts resulted in the creation of the U.S. Veterans Bureau, forerunner of the Veterans Administration, and Mr. Speaker, I yield to Representative Gunther.
Member from Martin, Representative Gunther.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whereas the American Legion was the architect of the original GI Bill, the Servicemen Readjustment Act of 1944, and I will yield to Representative Miller.
Member from Candy Ojai, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whereas American Legion Baseball is one of the most successful and tradition-rich amateur athletic leagues, and the American Legion Department of Minnesota has sponsored many players who were later inducted into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, and, Mr. Speaker, I yield to Representative Nash.
Member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whereas the American Legion Department of Minnesota owns and operates Legionville, the only camp of its kind in the nation that educates and certifies school safety patrol personnel. And Mr. Speaker, I yield to Representative Lesh.
Member from Ramsey, Representative Lesh.
Whereas the American Legion Department of Minnesota, in cooperation with the University of Minnesota and the VA Medical Center in Minneapolis, funds a research chair for the investigation of the brain and brain disease, and, Mr. Speaker, I yield to Representative Gruenhagen.
Member from Sibley, Representative Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, whereas the American Legion's focus on service to veterans, service to members, and communities has helped it evolve from a group of war-weary World War I veterans into one of the most influential nonprofit groups and the largest veterans service organization in the United States. And Mr. Speaker, I yield to Representative Grossell.
Member from Clearwater, Representative Grossell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whereas the American Legion's 100th National Convention, which launches its year-long centennial celebration, will be held in Minneapolis from August 24th through 30th, 2018. The same location where its founding convention was held. Now therefore, and I yield to Representative Detmer.
Member from Washington, Representative Detmer.
Mr. Speaker and members, be it resolved by the Committee of Rules and Legislative Administration of the House of Representatives of the State of Minnesota that it congratulates the American Legion Department of Minnesota on being awarded the American Legion 100th National Convention from August 24th to the 30th in Minneapolis, and commends the American Legions for its contributions to Minnesota and to the United States. Signed May 16, 2018, Kurt Dowd, Speaker, Minnesota House of Representatives, Joyce Pepin, the Chair of the Rules and Legislative Administration, and myself. And members, everyone, all the readers today are veterans. Thank you.
Next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3610. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3610, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety.
Call upon the author of the bill from Asante, Representative Johnson B., to explain the bill.
Members, House File 3610 deals with increasing the penalty for assaulting a peace officer. As many of you know, I spent most of my life as a police officer, same with Representative Grossell. I myself have been assaulted. When somebody assaults a peace officer, that officer is in a fight for his life. Now, the type of assault we're talking about is not with somebody resisting arrest. Deals with an incident like happened to me, walking into a house to answer a call. Not quite sure what's going on yet. Walking downstairs, and when you're not even down, completely down into the basement, having a foot go over your head from a back kick, trying to take your head off. After that kick, the battle was on. I had my jacket pulled over my head, and the gentleman, or I should say the person, was trying to remove my firearm from my holster. I was battling for my life. I was fortunate. I wasn't even injured, didn't even have a scratch. I was very thankful the father and the cousin to that person was described by another officer who arrived at the scene after we had managed to get him subdued. Described him as, if many of you know the old wrestling days from a long time ago, Jerry Blackwell. He was described as his twin brother. That gentleman, I cannot call him a gentleman. That person was trying to kill me, but because I wasn't injured, there was not much that we could do for charging. At that time, I believe it was just a misdemeanor. Yes, he had other charges for the domestic, but he was not held responsible for literally trying to kill me. This bill deals with this. This makes any assault on a peace officer a felony. We have officers that are walking down the street across this country, sitting in a coffee shop, having coffee, sitting in a restaurant, having lunch. And I believe it's been up to over 20 times this year across this country, somebody's walked up behind them and actually killed them. We need to put a stop to this. We need stiff penalties for people who are willing to physically assault a person, especially a law enforcement officer. Because that officer is the one that's running to protect you when we're in trouble. It's running to save your child that's been involved in an incident. It's running to help your child that's been involved in the traffic accident. We need to do whatever we can to protect our officers because they're the ones that are protecting you.
There are no amendment. Excuse me. Representative Lesh offers the following amendment. We will delay in reporting the amendment. As we wait, is there any discussion on the underlying bill? Lesh offers the following amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Lesh moves to amend House File Number 3610 as follows. The amendment is coded A18-0929.
Call upon the author of the amendment from Ramsey, Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. This amendment deals with dissemination of private information about law enforcement officials' families. I haven't run into any opposition from it. It's pretty straightforward. And I think Representative Johnson has placed his good housekeeping seal of approval on it. I'm pretty sure he told me that yesterday. In any case, vote green. Thanks.
Discussion. Member from Isanti, Representative Johnson B.
Mr. Chair, members, Representative Lesh, thank you for bringing this forward. I don't know if a couple of years ago, I don't know if anybody is aware, but we had a number of, I believe it was 22 to 25 officers on the East Coast whose names, their family names, their addresses, their kids' names were put on a website. We need to keep this information private because an officer has enough to worry about without worrying about what's happening to his family. Please accept this amendment.
Discussion to the amendment. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 3610 as amended.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as you know, I work outside the legislature as a prosecutor, and so I get the chance to work with law enforcement officers every day, and every day I'm just really impressed with the courage and the strength that they show in dealing with problems that we don't, because we haven't solved problems, it ends up being our law enforcement at the point having to deal with so many issues. I have concerns with how this bill is structured. I share them with the chair and committee, and I think it's just important we understand what's going on here. So, if a civilian is assaulted and there is physical harm caused, that is a misdemeanor. Right now, under the law, and this is a change since the incident described by Chair Johnson, if an officer is assaulted and there's no bodily harm, there's no marks in any way, that is a gross misdemeanor. That is a higher penalty than if a civilian is assaulted. And if the officer is assaulted and there is demonstrable bodily harm, which can be a mark of any kind, that is a felony right now. So right now, we have these higher penalties on officers. That is as it should be. We need to recognize the important role that officers play in our society and our community. The concern with making this change, though, members, is that now we're removing the distinction of when there is an assault where that bodily harm is not caused. Where there is a kick, which again is a dangerous situation, it should be criminalized. It in fact is more than if a civilian is assaulted. But if there's a kick but there's no contact, or there is contact but there's no demonstrable mark of any kind, this increases that to a felony. It removes the distinction of whether harm is caused, which, depending on how you view things, means that it takes away the incentive to not cause harm. If someone's going to be assaulting an officer anyway, well, they might as well assault them a little bit harder and cause more damage because the penalty is going to be the same. You might note in the bill that there's a difference in the number of years and the fine, but actually the way that it would work out under our sentencing guidelines, I'm happy to explain this in response to questions, it ends up being the same penalty either way. So the same penalty either way. Members, again, an assault on an officer is reprehensible. And we need to recognize that officers are solving the problems or addressing the problems that we are not solving. Members, when we are not investing in schools, we know the governor has proposed $140 million in emergency school aid. We're not investing in schools. That ends up having a ripple effect. Third grade literacy levels help to determine the size of prisons that get built years later. When we're not investing in mental health services, it's our officers, our brave officers, that are dealing with those issues. So my concern in the remaining days of session is that we be focused on the ways that we can help our brave law enforcement officers. We be focused on the investments that we make. We can focus on investing in our schools, investing in vulnerable people, investing in making sure that everyone in our state is in a position to contribute and to thrive. And when we don't make those investments, when instead we focus on these sorts of points, I get real concerned that we are not serving our brave officers well. So as I say, I have a concern with this bill broadly in that point that I've made, but also narrowly and specifically, that if what we want to do is make sure that officers are assaulted less and are harmed less in the brave work that they're doing, I have great concerns that this may end up leading us the wrong way. And I have grave concerns that by focusing on this particular issue, we've got a couple other bills coming up as well, that's good, and we need to make sure to be stepping back and dealing with how we can keep officers safe, keep communities safe more broadly in the work that we do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Discussion to the bill. The author of the bill from Asante, Representative Johnson B.
Members, we need to do this for our officers. They deserve it.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill as amended. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 101 ayes and 24 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3674. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3674, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to state personnel.
Call upon the author of the bill from Wright, Representative O'Neill. Representative O'Neill, before I recognize you, just a quick announcement. We have a former member in the chamber, a member who served from 2007 to 2010 from Chisago County, former Representative Jeremy Kalin. Member from Wright, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. So this biennium, I became the chair of the Subcommittee on Employee Relations. And I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what the Subcommittee on Employee Relations does and how it operates very differently than some of our other committees, and especially for the members of the public that are watching. The Subcommittee on Employee Relations reviews all of the state employee contracts, which in this biennium is about $9.47 billion. So close to $10 billion worth of contract money that comes through the Subcommittee on Employee Relations. When we're in the interim and we receive a contract, it's a very strange committee because if we don't meet in 30 days, that contract goes into an interim approval, so a temporary approval, and the pay raises go and all of the matters of the contract are in effect. Now we, the legislature, have to come back when we're in session and actually vote for it and go on through the regular process. But it's a very unusual process. So if we don't meet in 30 days, it automatically goes into effect. That'd be kind of like if you're in your committee and you didn't get a bill hearing, your bill passes. It's very unusual. Another thing that happens in the Subcommittee on Employee Relations I have found is that if there's a tie vote, so a tie vote goes to a win. If there's a tie vote in any other committee, it fails. Another very unusual thing. Now, I had already brought a few policy pieces to the floor earlier in session, and we didn't have an opportunity to vote on those. That was tabled for the day. And I'm bringing to you one of those policy pieces this afternoon. And what this policy piece does is it simply asks MMB, when you submit a contract, which it could be a 1,000-page contract, and most of them are a 1,000-page contract, when you submit it, we, the SCR, the Subcommittee on Employee Relations, we need some additional information. And those 6 different pieces of information that are in the bill for the request from MMB, a breakdown of all of the costs that are within that contract. It also asks, can these costs be paid for by each agency within their appropriations, the appropriations that we've already determined and passed into law? Which fund would cover that? So there's many funds, as you know. There's dedicated funds, there's general funds, there's all kinds of different funds here at the legislature. So specifically, which fund would pay for that contract? And is there any need to transfer money between agencies? Also, we want to know a description of any contractor. So if you have to hire contractors to fulfill the duty of that agency and the contract, what are those parameters? What are the contracts? And finally, the 6th piece of information we're asking from MMB is, what is your contingency plan if, in fact, those revenues do not cover these contracts? So, members, that is the bill before you, and I appreciate your support.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its 3rd reading.
3rd reading, House File Number 3674.
3rd reading. Discussion to the bill. Member from Hennepin, Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, as the longest-serving member on the Subcommittee on Employee Relations at this time, I have had very big concerns this year and last year about how the subcommittee operated for the first time. Typically, the subcommittee is not the place where political agendas seep into the work of approval of contracts or not, and this is the first time that that happened. This is the first time that rules were changed about who could participate and who could testify on issues, who could place issues on the agenda and who could not. Those things typically don't happen on the Subcommittee on Employee Relations, and our role is to evaluate the contracts and to evaluate whether or not they can be met by the money that we approved in the budget previously. This is just one more step to micromanage what is happening and place political agendas before state employees. Members, I'm tired of the attacks on public employees. I'm tired of people using public employees as political pawns. I'm a no on this bill.
Discussion to the bill. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 74 ayes and 52 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1481. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 1481, number 4 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety, the first engrossment.
Call upon the author of the bill from Clearwater, Representative Grossell, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill increases the penalty for assaulting our firefighters, medical personnel in the hospital, and EMS in the course of their duties. Even though this addresses incidents after the fact, my hope is that it will deter future attacks. I've heard testimonies from all of these professional groups of assaults that have left them injured, out of work, or scared to go back to work. And this shouldn't be. This shouldn't be. These people are out there putting themselves in vulnerable positions to help others. And I think that we need to give them more protection. In the, I believe that, I lost my place here, sorry. This bill is got the full support of the Minnesota Nurses Association, firefighters, and EMS. And it has quite a bit of bipartisan support as well. So my hope is that we'll be able to take this bill and move it forward with green votes.
There are no amendments to the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 1481.
Third reading. Discussion. Discussion to the bill. Seeing no discussion, the clerk, my apologies, the member from Hennepin, Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And members, we did hear testimony from the Minnesota Nurses Associations. The firefighters also do support this bill, and I would encourage members to support it. Members, there was an issue raised in committee about whether or not we have taken care of the issues with folks with mental illness. NAMI does still have some concern with the language, and I wanted to make sure members were aware.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 125 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3611. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3611, number 5 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety, the first engrossment.
Call upon the author of the bill from Clearwater, Representative Grossell, to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This bill will prevent mayors, city councils, and county boards from disarming their law enforcement entities. Recent mayoral candidates thought it may be a good idea if they had the ability to disarm their law enforcement. And with that being said, I believe it may be a good idea to make sure that that can happen. I believe, whoops. Oh. I believe if comments like this are coming out and being put forward in public, then someone else is going to try to follow suit. Someone else is going to try to take that action. There should be a handout that should have been passed out that shows a more recent attempt to disarm, a call to disarm the University of Minnesota Police. Members, in order for our law enforcement entities to be able to protect themselves and in turn protect your families and mine, I believe we must give them all the tools that are necessary to do their job. I ask you to support this bill, not only to protect our law enforcement officers, but also to make sure that they have all the tools to protect our families. I ask for a green vote.
Representative Dean R. offers the following amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Dean R. moves to amend House File Number 3611, the first engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A1.
Call upon the author of the amendment from Hennepin, Representative Dean R.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this amendment is about getting tools to officers. My amendment instructs the Post Board to prepare objectives for a training program that would aid the instruction of officers in the use of smart gun technology. For those of you who don't know, smart gun technology is technology that only allows the person or the persons assigned to that particular firearm to actually use it. And I would like to thank Representative Johnson for talking about a situation that he was in fear for his life, where someone was actually going to gain control of his gun. And what smart gun technology does is it would have made that situation probably less frightful for that officer, because if that individual would have gotten a hold of that gun, that firearm would not have been able to fire. So this is really about protecting officers and making them safe. I would hope that in the spirit of making our officers safer today and protecting officers, that you all would support my amendment to the Grossell bill. Please vote yes.
Discussion to the amendment. Member from Chisago, Representative Johnson B.
Mr. Speaker, members, Representative Dean talked about an incident I had. Because I was in close proximity to my firearm, it would have still gone off. Now, the idea of smart gun technology started about 20 years ago. Then it seemed to stall out. Although a few firearm manufacturers are still looking at it, designing and testing the technology is still a long ways before it becomes reliable. Currently, with a failure rate of up to 10%, that means 1 out of every time you need to use that firearm, it does not work. And when an officer needs to use his firearm, the situation is really bad. But on top of a 10%, up to 10% failure rate, which is unacceptable, the cost of that firearm is about 4 times as high. Now, Representative Dean, I also do not believe at this time we should be wasting the officers' time with this type of training. We have a lot of other mandated training through the Post Board, and we're almost to the point where the mandated training is equal to the number of the hours they're required to have in a 3-year period. So those officers cannot get specialized training that they would like to have and they're interested in. They're just doing the mandatory training already, and they're getting their hours, their required hours. But if the department chooses to look at this kind of technology, it should be their choice. We should not mandate it. But we should do everything we can to keep those officers safe, making sure that they have the tools available so at the end of their shift, they're going home to their friends and children, and that it's not an end of watch like the ceremony we had yesterday out in just south end of the Capitol grounds.
Member from Clearwater, Representative Grossell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representatives, after speaking to the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association and County Sheriff's Association, they are not currently using, nor do they intend to use these smart weapons in the near future, or even in the foreseeable future. Our officers are very well trained. They're given extensive training in the use of their weapons and in weapon retention. In the field, Representatives, the time that you have to react to a lot of different situations is mere seconds. And on my part, with something that has not been field proven, I'm not willing to use our men and women in uniform as guinea pigs. So I think I will be asking for a red vote on this amendment.
Member from Hennepin, Representative Dean R.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Johnson and Representative Grossell, for misrepresenting what this amendment actually says. I'll read it for you word for word, and I want you to hear what those words say. It says, by March 1st, 2019, the board shall prepare objectives for a training course to instruct peace officers in the use of smart gun technology. It doesn't say they have to implement a training course. It doesn't say that officers need to take this training. It says that they need to prepare objectives for a training course. And, you know, to make reference to smart gun technology from 20 years ago would be like saying, this thing I have in my pocket is the same thing that I had 20 years ago. The phone that I had in my pocket 20 years ago, I think I had to flip it open, and it made phone calls. So technology is changing rapidly, and I think it would be incumbent upon us to make sure that our officers are prepared, and the post-training board, which actually trains our officers, is actually prepared to consider what technology would be in the future, whether it's near or whether it's 3 or 4 years from now. If we really care about police officers and their safety, we'll be looking at all tools to help make their jobs safer. And so I would ask that that members vote green on this, vote yes, because it's time for us to start moving in the future on many things, and that also includes policing. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Discussion to the amendment. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. No. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments of the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 3611.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Seeing no further discussion, the member from Hennepin, and then the member from Hennepin, Representative Dean R.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members. We know the candidate for a mayor that made a statement that has brought this bill before us, and everybody that I've talked to said that this bill virtually does nothing than what we have today. You know, when I made the statement, I thought it important to talk about policing, about safety in our communities, and about the tools that officers use. You know, a couple years ago, we passed legislation that funded officers in implicit bias, understanding, and in de-escalation training. So in many ways, we've already come to the conclusion that officers can be better, and that they can learn, and that they can understand situations that maybe they didn't understand in the past. I'm a firm believer that an officer does not have to have a sidearm on them all the time. And I say all the time because I think it's important to realize all the time. I'm not saying that cops should never carry guns. I've never said that cops should never carry guns. I also believe that there are situations where a cop is carrying a firearm that actually gets in the way of an interaction. And that could be on National Night Out, which many cities participate throughout the US, where an officer has their car 12, 15, 20 feet away from the people who are gathering to talk about safety in their community and in their neighborhood. And I've talked to many people at National Night Outs that said, why is an officer carrying a gun in this situation? Now, granted, National Night Out is actually something that is sponsored by police departments. But the thought that there's not situations, and I asked Representative Grossell in committee about this, you know, if there are police departments that want to use a different model than we currently use throughout the United States, is there anything in this bill that prohibits that? If there was a police department that said, you know what, we're going to try to do something different. We've seen other countries throughout the world that officers don't carry guns. They interact with the public in a very different way, and that if there was a local police department in the state of Minnesota that wanted to do something a little bit different, do a pilot project, ask a few officers if they would be willing or interested in participating in a program where they might go into situations where they're not having firearms with them. And he said, no, there's nothing that prohibits that. So for that reason, members, I really wish we would have adopted my amendment. I think it's about moving things forward. Hey, Drew, how you doing? I'm glad you're filming me. I appreciate that. It's really, really troubling that we can't even move a little bit forward on issues around policing. People in my side of the aisle in our caucus, we don't dislike police. I depend on police all the time. And you know what? When there's trouble in my neighborhood, and when I hear shots fired in my neighborhood, guess what I do? I call the police, because that's what you do. But I think there are situations, and this is one of those situations where I think it's important to have a dialogue about what we value, what we think is important, and how we can make our communities safer. So sometimes we say things to enter into a conversation. And I hope that every time we say things to enter into a conversation, that we don't see bills on the floor to try to say, no, we can't have those types of conversations. Because that's not what this body is about. This body is about having debates. It's about having conversations about those things that are important to the people in the state of Minnesota. So members, I'm going to be voting green on this bill because I don't think it really does a whole lot more than we currently have in place. So I'd ask that all of you vote green as well.
Member from Olmsted, member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I think this is an excellent effort and a great bill, especially as we're celebrating Law Enforcement Safety Week. But I was wondering if Representative Grossell would yield to a question.
He will. Representative Nash.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Grossell, we just heard that police don't always need their weapon, and I guess my question for you as a policeman, when you entered a situation, you didn't know necessarily what was going to happen per se, did you? So if you would yield to that.
Representative Grossell.
Thank you, Representative Nash. I talk frequently about having been shot in the line of duty. On that morning, no, you didn't have the option to run back to your squad car to get your weapon. It went from a disgruntled customer in a hotel to having a .38 revolver stuck between my eyes. The first round missed my head. The second round went through my arm. I would not have had time to run back to my vehicle to retrieve my firearm, nor would my partner have.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Grossell makes my point exactly, members, is that police will enter a situation that may seem benign when they roll up to that situation. And if they were to be disarmed, as Representative Dean encourages, they're going to lose their life. They could lose their life. This is a preposterous idea. And I just think that for us to advocate for police officers to be disarmed, Representative Grossell, Representative Johnson and other people who have been in law enforcement will tell you that they don't know what the situation at hand is, and they would be recalcitrant in their job if they went unarmed, and they would be a liability to those that they are there to protect and themselves by not being able to defend themselves. So members, vote green.
Member from Hennepin, Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, I support the bill. I want to make it very clear in response to Representative Nash's comments. There's nothing in this bill that requires a police officer to carry a gun, but what it says is that a local political entity can't keep them from it. And that's what we want. We want law enforcement officers to be making the decisions about when it is safe for them to bear their firearms and when it is not. Members, we've seen controversy in this state when the NFL said Minnesota law enforcement officers couldn't have their firearms in the stadium. And we debated that heavily about whether or not a private entity such as the NFL should be able to keep Minnesota police officers from carrying their firearms in the stadium. So these kinds of conversations are not new to this body, and I would encourage members to support the bill.
Member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it is critical that we protect law enforcement officers from people who are armed. It's critical, therefore, that they be armed in those dangerous situations as was described. And that's why it's critical that we do more to make sure that those dangerous people are not themselves armed. To do background checks, to have court orders so that evidence of behavior by those dangerous people can be presented to a court. That's something that we can do to protect officers, in addition to making sure that officers are themselves armed. Because I'll tell you, yes, it helps to have that officer be armed, but it also helps to have that dangerous person who has demonstrated by being a violent felon that they should not have a gun. We can do more to address that. We should do more to address that. 90% of Minnesotans are demanding that we do more. That is yet another example of something where we're spending time on some issues, which is fine. We are not addressing the needs of Minnesotans and not addressing the needs that will keep our officers safe more broadly, including by making sure that those dangerous people they interact with are not themselves armed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Hennepin, Representative DNR.
I just want to remind the body that I asked you to vote green on this.
The author of the bill from Clearwater, Representative Grossell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, representatives. Representative Dean, I don't recall having that conversation with that verbiage in there. I'm getting older. I may forget. So that's to put words in my mouth. I don't like having that done. So again, members, these are tools. These are tools that officers need. And the thing about it is that we don't get to choose when and where we will need each tool. Each tool on our duty belt, each tool on our vest has a specific function to be used at a specific time. We don't have time to run back to vehicles to retrieve equipment. Now we talk about guns again. Let's talk about knives then. Let's talk about baseball bats or a piece of pipe. There are numerous things that can be used to do great bodily harm or cause death. I've seen all of those things used. I've investigated cases where people have been stabbed to death. People have been bludgeoned to death with a baseball bat or a pipe. So to me, it is not really a gun issue. It is a societal moral compass issue. We should not and must not disarm our law enforcement entities. Please support this bill.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 126 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 2869. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 2869, number 6 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to transportation, the first engrossment.
Call upon the author of the bill from Anoka, Representative Bahr C, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill simply changes which file cabinet the tariff is kept in. We're currently intrastate, household movers, fill out a tariff, file it, and it's maintained in a file cabinet at the Department of Transportation. This bill simply says that those tariffs will be maintained on-site with the carrier, and at any time they're open for public inspection and by either the public or the department. And that's the only thing it changes. It does reduce the cost to the government by approximately $80,000.
Representative Bahr C offers the following amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Bahr C moves to amend Senate File number 2869, the first engrossment as follows. Delete everything after the enacting clause and insert the following language of House File number 3282, the first engrossment. The amendment is coded DEA 3282.
Member from Anoka, Representative Bahr C.
That is my amendment. Thank you. It just simply changes the title. That's the only difference between House language and Senate language, which was 2 words in the title, and I appreciate your support.
Discussion. Discussion to the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File number 2869, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion. The member from Hennepin, Representative Carlson A.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, just wanted to provide a little further context with what this bill actually does. So, it repeals the administrative process for moving companies, so they no longer have to file their tariffs with MnDOT. Seems straightforward enough. Those moving companies will be allowed then to keep those tariffs on file within their office. So, to be clear, moving companies are not like most trucks you see on the highway. They are transporting people's personal belongings. What's in that truck is the antique grandfather clock that's been handed down from generation to generation. It's the kids' bikes, it's all the family photo albums. What this bill is going to do is essentially remove consumer protections. And with something when it comes to people's personal belongings, that's something that we should provide for some additional oversight. So I just wanted to make clear that this is just not some bureaucratic process that we are addressing here. This is in place for a very specific reason. Requiring movers to file their tariffs with MnDOT protects consumers so that their prices remain verifiable and also keeps companies from discriminating against Minnesotans. So please bear that in mind when voting on this bill. Thank you.
Member from Ramsey, Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise in opposition to this bill. One of the things that Representative Bahr said, I understand differently, that he was saying it was in a different file cabinet. What I understand is that MnDOT actually has this on their website, as well as a booklet that they have published it in. So this information is accessible, and it has been working. There hasn't been a lot of complaints. But MnDOT has the ability to make this information public and people to have access to it. And I encourage you a no vote. Thank you.
And my apologies, Representative Bernardi. You are from Anoka, not from Ramsey. So, discussion to the bill. The author of the bill from Anoka, Representative Bahr C.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This does not change consumer protections. This is the same tariff filed by the same people, actually written by the same people, only kept in a different place, and is open to public scrutiny at any time. So the consumer protection portions of tariffs are maintained. Absolutely nothing has changed on that. The Senate position on this, this did pass out of the Senate with 0 opposition. We've talked to MnDOT about this, and they have absolutely no opposition to this bill either. So I ask for a green vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 95 ayes and 31 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 893. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 893, number 7 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to notaries public, the third engrossment.
Call upon the author of the bill from Hennepin, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate File 893 changes the notary statutes after a work group spent over 7 months meeting 13 times. This bill updates the statutes and bring in a remote notarization to Minnesota, the 8th state in the country to do so. This bill is supported by Michelle Timmons, our former reviser, as well as the Secretary of State's office, the Department of Commerce, the bankers, the realtors, the mortgage bankers, the Land Title Association, and the county recorders. I ask for your support.
There are no amendments to the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File number 893.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Seeing no further discussion, member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a good bill, and I just want to note the work of the Uniform Law Commission, which works really, really hard so that we don't have to, that they can just present a bill like this that works well and keeps our system moving. So many thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Member from St. Louis, Representative Murphy M.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Smith, I was just wondering if the fact that are the state representatives who are notaries by the fact that they were elected and given the opportunities to work as notaries, are they affected in any way in this bill?
He will yield. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, no, they are not.
Further discussion. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 127 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3463. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3463, number 8 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to motor vehicles, the fourth engrossment.
Call upon the author of the bill from Waseca, Representative Petersburg, to explain the bill. Representative Petersburg, do you wish to offer your author's amendment at this time?
That would be great. Thank you.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Petersburg moves to amend House File number 3463, the fourth engrossment, as follows. The amendment is coded A15.
Call upon the author of the amendment from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's no surprise to anybody here that since July of last year, virtually everybody that drives a car, has been involved with a car, has had some issues with our MNLAR system that, I guess in my words, would say have not been favorable at this point. This bill really deals with the bulk of new car sales and so forth through dealers that probably deal with most of the transactions around cars. It's gone through 5 different committees, and in each one of those, we've tried to make improvements and make it better. When we started getting to the fiscal notes, we started seeing large fees being expected due to the need for MNLARs to be reprogrammed, allowing for various things. So trying to make this palatable for everybody to vote yes on and vote green on, I've been working with various groups trying to cut back the bill to make it more something that both the department, vehicle services, et cetera, can buy into. And so this bill and this amendment actually does that. So what the amendment does from the original bill is it eliminates the deputy registrars from being able to give the original titles. That will just stay in the process as it is. The Department of Vehicle Services minutes said it would be a couple years before they could implement it anyway, and that eliminates almost $3 million of the cost of this bill. The second part that it changes is also how the advisory committee is put together, and it pretty much reverts back to the executive steering committee that the department already has, except that it also makes one of its duties a response back to the newly created MNLAR steering committee as well. So that's helpful. We still have one area that I'm working on with Department of Administration in regards to allowing the electronic vehicle transfer, title and registration program, allowing vendors to come in and help with that, which we think with some more work that may be able to eliminate the rest of the funding need for this bill. But that is the amendment as it is to my particular motion.
Discussion to the amendment. Member from Anoka, Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Regarding this amendment, and Representative Petersburg, I know you've done a yeoman's work to improve this, but it still has more work to go. And I did want to comment that I think that this amendment moves it closer into a better direction. I don't know, it doesn't actually solve the problem, but I am going to support the amendment and ask for members to support it as well. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, all those member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Petersburg yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Petersburg, just checking on the Executive Steering Committee. Will the meetings of the Executive Steering Committee, which I see doesn't have any public members, will those meetings be public? Will they be posted? Will they be noticed? Can members of the public attend those meetings?
Member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Hansen. So my understanding is that this actually falls back into the current steering committee and executive committee that the department is using and would fall underneath the same guides as that particular committee is currently. And so whereas I'm not sure exactly whether they have open meetings, they certainly do follow within the timelines and the parameters that the department has set up for that committee already.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Lean offers the following amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Lean moves to amend House File Number 3463, the fourth and Grossman as amended. The amendment is coded A12.
Call upon the author of the amendment from Clay, Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The A12 amendment would allow the Department of Public Safety the authority to issue temporary permits for vehicle purchases, expiring registrations, and license plate replacements for up to 180 days. This bill would help Minnesotans avoid tickets and citations because of expired plates or registrations, or Minnesotans who have purchased new vehicles but don't yet have the plates or registrations or new plates and registrations, while we, the legislature, DPS, and Minute find solutions and fixes to the MNLAR system. So members, I ask for your support.
Member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I also support this particular amendment. It allows consumers not to have to continually go back to the department and the deputy registers and extend their permits. And it just makes sense. The commissioner always has the ability to determine that piece. So please vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. If there are no further amendments to the desk, the clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 3463, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. The author of the bill from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. I'm not sure. I just didn't see anybody rise, so maybe I'll just say a great bill. Please vote green.
Seeing no further discussion, Member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Petersburg, I would just ask, my understanding is this, I'm not sure if there's a similar bill moving in the Senate, but this question of whether the meetings are public, whether they're open, maybe there's at some point when this goes to conference or in discussions with the Senate, I think it would be wise to clarify whether they're open meetings, whether they're public meetings, whether they're recorded, whether there's a way that the public can interchange with that.
Member from Anoka, Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise, and as I mentioned before, I know Representative Petersburg has tried to improve this bill. It had really far reach when it started, and it still needs more work to go. It's taking money out of other budgets to pay for it, so it's not really, it's not funding itself. So it's a shell game, and it really needs to be funded because there is a cost to this, and I recommend a no vote until we can get this fixed. Thank you.
The author of the bill from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly will check on the meeting. I believe, I was just wanting to check that on whether or not it's open to Section 15059 governs the committee. So I believe all of those issues that you raised are covered under that, but I certainly will verify that to make sure that it happens. I just ask that you support this bill. This bill is an important bill for auto dealers and others, and those that are being frustrated with trying to buy a car, not being able to get their title, not being able to get their registration. It's even more particularly challenging when somebody buys a car or a used car from a dealer and then unforeseenly within a month or two have an accident, and they can't even get the insurance money until they get their title. And so we're just trying to figure out ways in which we can help the program, help the deputy registers, help the dealers to streamline the system so that people can kind of get back to normal in regards to purchasing vehicles, transferring them, and so forth. And I believe that by the time this bill gets enacted, the cost from it will be negligible. The Department of Administration says if they can actually organize a master contract for some of these electronic vendors, that they may be able to eliminate that cost. And so I'll continue working on that, absolutely. But at this point, this bill is extremely good, and I ask for your green vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 92 ayes and 31 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. Member from Hennepin, Majority Leader Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I move a recess to the call of the chair for approximately an hour. And Republican members, we will go to our caucus room immediately after recess.
Representative Hortman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. DFL members, I believe we already discussed the item at issue, but we'll return to caucus for a few moments so I can update you.
Majority Leader Pepin moves a recess to the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The House is in recess to the call of the chair.